Tropical weather activity across northern Australia is ramping up. Two systems worth your attention. One in the Coral Sea affecting Queensland, another developing in Western Australia that could become significant. Let us break down what is happening and what you need to know. Right now, across central Queensland, conditions have been challenging. The Fitzroy River catchment is experiencing major flooding. The Mackenzie River at Blackwater is running high. Water flowing over causeways that are normally 5 metres above the creek bed. This isn't unprecedented for Blackwater, but it's substantial. And more rainfall is complicating the situation. The flooding you are seeing in central Queensland isn't going away quickly, but there is some relief ahead. We're not expecting significant rises over the next couple of days. After weeks of heavy rainfall and rising water levels, that's the best news this region has had in a while. But let's talk about what is developing, because the weather pattern across northern Australia is about to become more active. In the Coral Sea, there's convective activity building, a tropical low pressure system sitting just north of New Caledonia. This system is expected to intensify, possibly reaching tropical cyclone strength early next week. The good news for Australia is that it is tracking northeast, well away from our coastline. New Caledonia will cop the brunt of this system. Cyclone force winds likely by early next week. Gale force winds across the northern edges of the island. Heavy rainfall, big seas, strong wind gusts. If you've got mates or family in New Caledonia, they should be keeping an eye on this one. For Queensland, the indirect impacts are what matter. This system is strengthening the monsoon trough. That means continued showers and thunderstorms across central and northern Queensland. Not what the flooded areas need, but the rainfall totals should be manageable. We're talking scattered showers and storms, not the persistent heavy rain that caused the current flooding. The monsoon trough is expected to strengthen through early next week. When that happens, we could see a tropical low develop in the Coral Sea. This is a common pattern. The monsoon trough extends across northern Australia, areas of low pressure spin off, and sometimes they organise into tropical cyclones. The European forecast model shows this development happening between the 22nd and 25th of January. A defined area of low pressure forming in the Coral Sea, potentially reaching tropical cyclone status around Australia Day before tracking southeast. Now, here is the important part. If this system does develop, it's not expected to threaten the Queensland coastline. The jet stream is positioned too far north. It'll steer any system that forms out into the Coral Sea and down towards the southeast. The graveyard, as we call it. It's unusual to see tropical cyclones make landfall on Queensland before February. The jet stream typically sits across northern Australia during December and January, pushing systems away from the coast. We need the jet stream to shift further south, down through South Australia and New South Wales, before cyclones can approach the Queensland coastline with any consistency. That pattern change usually happens in February. This year, the jet stream is positioned slightly further south than average for mid-January. That gives any developing system a marginally better chance of affecting Queensland than it would normally have at this time of year. But the steering currents still favour a south-eastward track into the open ocean. If a tropical low does form, expect it to be broad and messy, not a tight, well-organised system. Think back to Tropical Cyclone Koji earlier this season. That was a massive, disorganised, low-pressure system with tropical cyclone force winds extending over 100 kilometres from the centre when it approached the North Queensland coast. A similar structure is likely if this Coral Sea system develops. The main impact for Queensland will be rainfall. Northern and central Queensland can expect continued showers and thunderstorms as the monsoon strengthens. Some areas might see heavy falls, particularly if convection organises near the coast. But we are not looking at a direct cyclone threat at this stage. For those in flood-affected areas of central Queensland, monitor the Bureau of Meteorology forecasts closely. Even though we're not expecting the dramatic rises of recent weeks, any additional rainfall complicates the recovery. Water levels are already high. Creek and river systems are saturated. It doesn't take much to cause localised problems. Now, let's shift our attention to Western Australia. This is where things get interesting. The remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Koji are sitting in the Indian Ocean off the Kimberley coast. System 16U, as it S designated. This broad area of low pressure is about to reorganise and redevelop into what could be a significant tropical cyclone. The environment across the Indian Ocean right now is exceptionally favourable for cyclone development. Sea surface temperatures are warm, wind shear is low, moisture levels are high. You can see massive convection over the Kimberley region. Cloud and thunderstorm activity that shows just how moist the atmosphere is across northwestern Australia and into the Indian Ocean. Before January, the Indian Ocean is typically quiet. Clear skies, settled conditions, but now it's turbulent. The monsoon is active. Thunderstorms are firing regularly. This is the environment where tropical cyclones thrive. The forecast models are in strong agreement that this system will develop into a tropical cyclone. It's expected to get organised on Monday or Tuesday, moving offshore from the Kimberley coast and then intensifying rapidly. Where it goes from there is the critical question. And right now, there is significant uncertainty. Multiple scenarios are possible. Some models take the system along the Kimberley coast, making landfall as a weak tropical cyclone in the northern Kimberley. Other models show a moderate cyclone tracking into the Broome area. And several models are forecasting a major cyclone impacting the Pilbara coast around Karatha or Port Hedland. All of these scenarios are plausible. The track depends on when the system makes a crucial turn. Here, what S going to happen? The cyclone will initially track southwest over the Indian Ocean. Then around Friday, the 23rd of January, a weak low pressure system will move through the Great Australian Bight and brush southwest and Western Australia. That system will interact with the tropical cyclone, causing it to make a U-turn and head back towards the Western Australian coast. The timing of that U-turn determines everything. If the cyclone turns early, while it is still relatively weak and positioned further north, it'll likely impact the Kimberley coast as a weaker system. If it turns later, after it's had more time to intensify over open water and drift further southwest, we are looking at a stronger cyclone hitting the Pilbara. The numerical models are split right down the middle. That tells you the uncertainty is high. This isn't a situation where we can confidently say where landfall will occur or what intensity to expect. What I can tell you is this: if you live anywhere between Exmouth and Coonawarra, you need to be checking the forecast every single day, not just casually, actually paying attention to how the models are tracking this system. Don't panic. Don't start making major preparations just yet. Don't go to the shops and strip the shelves. The system hasn't even formed yet. But you need to be aware and ready to act when the forecast becomes clearer. What we are looking for over the next few days is consistency. Are the models showing the same track, the same intensity, the same timing run after run, or are they flip-flopping? One run showing landfall at Exmouth as a Category 5, the next run showing Broome as a Category 1. Inconsistency means uncertainty. If the models keep changing their forecast dramatically, we want to have confidence in any particular outcome. But if we start seeing multiple consecutive model runs agreeing on the same scenario, that S when we'll have a clearer picture, that consistency should emerge early next week once the system actually forms and we can observe how it S behaving. Is it a compact system or a broad one? Is it intensifying quickly or slowly? How is it moving? Those real world observations will constrain the forecast models and reduce the uncertainty. Based on the current setup, my assessment is that the U-turn will likely happen later rather than sooner. That suggests a risk of a stronger tropical cyclone impacting the Pilbara coast, possibly around Karatha or Port Hedland, but that S just reading the current model trends. It is not a confident forecast. The situation could easily evolve differently. For those in cyclone-prone areas of Western Australia and the Northern Territory, your pre-season preparations should already be done. UV had plenty of time. But if you haven't assorted your property yet, now S the time. Secure loose items. Check your emergency supplies. Make sure you've got your cyclone plan ready. This isn't a fear-mongering. We re-in cyclone season. These threats are going to appear regularly through January, February, March and April. Being prepared is just sensible. Let me put the Western Australia situation in some historical context. The Pilbara and Kimberley coasts have seen their share of significant cyclones. The risk of a major system isn't unprecedented, but a strong cyclone making landfall in the Pilbara would be a serious event, particularly for coastal communities and offshore infrastructure. The oil and gas facilities around Karratha are designed to withstand cyclones, but operations typically shut down when a system approaches. If this develops into a Category 4 or 5 cyclone, the economic impacts would be substantial, even without considering any damage. For the pastoral industry across the northwest, timing matters. Late January is still relatively early in the wet season. Paddocks aren't as saturated as they would be in March, but a major cyclone bringing heavy rainfall could still cause significant disruption. Let's talk about what makes this Western Australian system potentially dangerous. It's not just the uncertainty in the track, it is the favourable conditions for rapid intensification. When a tropical cyclone moves over very warm water with low wind shear, it can strengthen remarkably quickly. We've seen this pattern before in the Indian Ocean. A system that a Category 1 on Monday can be a Category 4 by Wednesday. The ocean off northwestern Australia right now is primed for that kind of rapid development. The other concern is the potential for a large system. If this develops into a broad cyclone with an extensive wind field, the impacts spread over a much wider area. Coastal communities hundreds of kilometres from the centre could still experience damaging winds and storm surge. Storm surge is particularly dangerous along the Pilbara coast. The coastline is relatively low lying in places. A major cyclone making landfall near high tide with a significant storm surge could cause extensive coastal inundation. I am not trying to create alarm. These are simply the physical realities of what a strong tropical cyclone can do. Understanding the risks helps with preparation. For both systems, Queensland and Western Australia, the key message is the same. Monitor the forecast daily. Don't rely on one model or one forecast. Check the Bureau of Meteorology updates. They read the official source and they synthesise information from multiple models. The Bureau will issue tropical cyclone watches and warnings as these systems develop. A watch means cyclone conditions are possible within 48 hours. A warning means they re-expected within 24 hours. Those timeframes give you a window to finalise preparations if your area is threatened. If a cyclone watch is issued for your area, that S when you complete your preparations. Secure outdoor furniture, fill vehicles with fuel, stock up on essentials. Charge batteries, fill bathtubs with water if you are concerned about water supply. Check on elderly neighbours and mates who might need assistance. If a cyclone warning is issued, you should be ready to shelter. For coastal areas at risk of storm surge, that might mean evacuating to higher ground. For most locations, it means staying inside a solid structure away from windows until the system passes. Caravans and temporary structures are not safe in a cyclone. If you in a caravan park and a cyclone is approaching, relocate to a proper building. Many communities have designated cyclone shelters. Know where yours is before you need it. For livestock, make sure animals have access to shelter and high ground if possible. A major cyclone can cause significant stock losses if animals are exposed to the full force of the wind and rain. Let's bring this back to the broader pattern. What we're seeing is the monsoon becoming active across northern Australia. This is normal for late January. The atmosphere is loaded with moisture. Sea surface temperatures are at their seasonal peak. Low pressure systems develop and sometimes intensify into cyclones. The next 2 months, February and March, are typically the most active period of the cyclone season. We could see multiple systems developing. Some will track out to sea. Others might threaten the coast. This Western Australian system and the Coral Sea low are just the beginning. The Indian Ocean dipole is currently neutral. El Niño southern oscillation is neutral to weak La Niña conditions. Those broader climate patterns aren't as strongly favouring or suppressing cyclone activity. That means we're in a relatively typical setup for this time of year. Not an exceptionally active season, but not a quiet one either. For Queensland, the continued monsoon activity means ongoing rainfall. That's beneficial for most of the state. Dam levels need replenishment, paddocks need moisture. But for the flooded areas of central Queensland, more rain is unwelcome. The catchments need time to drain before they can absorb additional water without further flooding. The Bureau of Meteorology flood warnings remain current for the Fitzroy River and associated catchments. Major flooding continues in multiple locations. Those conditions will persist for days, possibly weeks in some areas. If you in a flood-affected community, follow the advice of emergency services. Don't drive through floodwater, ever. If it's flooded, forget it. For the rest of Queensland, New South Wales and the Northern Territory, the monsoon means typical summer weather, hot and humid in the north, afternoon storms in many areas. Some will be severe with heavy rainfall, damaging winds and large hail. That S standard for this time of year. Southern states are experiencing different conditions. Tasmania, Victoria, South Australia, they're seeing more settled weather at the moment. But that pattern can change quickly. Keep an eye on the forecast, particularly if you're replanning outdoor activities or travel. One final point about the Western Australian cyclone. The uncertainty in this forecast is unusually high, that S worth acknowledging. Normally, by the time a tropical low is this well defined, the models have a better handle on the likely track. But this system S interaction with the low pressure system in the Great Australian Bight creates complications that the models are struggling with. Different models use different approaches to simulate that interaction. Some emphasise the steering from the jet stream. Others emphasise the local environmental conditions around the cyclone itself. Those different approaches lead to different forecast tracks. As the system actually develops and we get real observations, the models will constrain around a more consistent solution. But right now, we're in a period of high uncertainty. That S frustrating, but it says the reality of tropical cyclone forecasting sometimes. The worst thing you can do is latch on to one model run showing one scenario and assume that S what will happen. Look at the spread of possibilities. Understand the range of outcomes. Prepare for the reasonable worst case in your area, but don't panic about the absolute worst case until the forecast firms up. For those of you who lived through Cyclone Tracy in Darwin back in 1974, you understand what a major cyclone can do. Tracy had winds up to 217 kilometres per hour. It destroyed Darwin. That was an extreme event. This Western Australian system, even if it becomes major, is not forecast to reach those intensities, but it still demands respect and preparation. The key is staying informed without becoming overwhelmed. Check the Bureau of Meteorology website once or twice a day. If you are in a potentially affected area, that S sufficient to stay current. You don't need to obsess over every model update. The official forecasts synthesise the best available information. Trust the Bureau S watches and warnings. They have access to more data and more sophisticated analysis tools than any of us looking at public forecast models. When they issue a watch or warning, take it seriously. I'll be providing updates as these systems develop, but your primary source of official information should always be the Bureau of Meteorology and your state emergency services. In summary, 2 tropical systems to watch. One in the Coral Sea, likely to develop early next week, but track away from Australia towards New Zealand. Impacts for Queensland will be continued monsoon activity and scattered storms, adding to concerns in already flooded areas of central Queensland. The other system off Western Australia has potential to become a significant tropical cyclone. Track is highly uncertain, could impact anywhere from the Kimberley to the Pilbara between now and late next week. Residents between Exmouth and Coonawarra should monitor forecasts daily and ensure cyclone preparations are complete. The monsoon is active. Cyclone season is underway. The next 2 months will see more systems develop. Some will be threats, others 1T. That S, the nature of the season across Northern Australia. Stay informed, stay prepared, but keep things in perspective. We've seen cyclone seasons before. This is what living in Northern Australia involves. Be sensible, be ready, but don't panic. That's the situation as it stands. Check back for updates as these systems develop.